Is it better to buy an emerging artist or an established one? This is one of the most asked questions, and in this video, we're going to talk about the main differences between these two major groups and which one you should purchase based on your needs. And if you're new here, ciao! My name is Linda and I'm your Italian art advisor based in Vancouver. On this channel, I'm going to talk about my experience in the art world and a few tricks that can help you along your art collecting journey. If that sounds good to you, please follow. Andiamo! To start talking about these macro groups of emerging artists and established artists, I think it will be helpful to step back a little bit and talk about the main differences of first market and secondary market. So first market is that part of the market in which the artworks come directly from the artist studio, they go in an art gallery, and then clients can purchase directly from the art gallery or sometimes directly from the artist. So there is that direct connection and the artworks are going to be purchased for the first time. Instead, in the secondary market, the artworks have a provenance, which means that the artworks were passed through different collectors before arriving to you, let's say. Mind that there are some galleries that handle first market and some galleries that also handle secondary market. Make sure that you are going to the gallery that you are interested into. If I'm going to a secondary art market gallery or if I'm going to an auction house, that means that the artworks that I want to purchase had previous owners before me. And that's very important to also add value to the artwork that you are going to purchase, because perhaps before you there was a very important collector or the artwork was shown in a very important museum. These are not things that make the artwork expensive, but they add importance to it. They add status to that painting. So these are the major differences. Of course, there are other differences, but this is the main difference. First market comes directly from the artist, never purchased before. Secondary market had previous owners before you, and that creates a history, a provenance for that specific artwork. These are the main difference. And if you're interested in learning more about art auction or about what documents you need from an art auction, make sure to comment below and I will create a video about it. And now that we have cleared up the main differences between first market and secondary market, we can move to the pros and cons for emerging artists and established artists. Let's start with pros for emerging artists. One of the first important things is that emerging artists have a more affordable price point. So that's helpful for those people that are at the beginning of their collecting journey and they don't have a big budget. Another very interesting and important fact is that if you're investing into emerging artists, it's usually much easier to get in contact with the artist and establish a relationship with the artist. Perhaps going to their shows so you can start to create this relationship and actually assisting the artist into their first and maybe more important stage of their growing career. Of course, another important point for collecting emerging artists is that you can support emerging galleries that represent emerging artists. And that's very important because those smaller galleries, emerging galleries, are then the ones, some of them will be the ones that will shape the new market, the future market. You're collecting a new voice. You're collecting a new artist that perhaps in the future will have a very important impact in the art market and in the future society. I'm not saying it for an investment point of view, but more for a cultural and supportive reason. Perhaps you will be interested in collecting emerging artists that are very close to your values and share your same interests. Let's say perhaps they're very involved in environmental issues, maybe political issues that are very close to you. So I think it's very important for all of us to not only focus on what is historical and recognizable and iconic, it's also really important to support the new artist that then will become the new historical in the future. And now we go to pros for established blue chip artists. First and maybe most obvious point is that compared to the emerging artists, the established and blue chip artists create artworks that are usually more stable from an investment point of view because established artists already have a group of trustworthy collectors that will reach for every new artwork that the artist is creating. For that reason, it's also much easier in the future to resell your artwork by a blue chip artist because they already have a following. They already have that pond of collectors that is looking for new artwork by the specific artist to be released. Another big pro for established artists is that they usually have a solid institutional history, because perhaps the artwork was often shown in very important museum or it was owned by very important collection. That contributes to build a strong market confidence in that specific art. The next point is a pro and a con at the same time, because if you're buying an artwork from an established artist or a blue chip artist, you should look into past prices in order to have a broader image of what the range is for the artwork that you are interested in. But at the same time, it's not very easy to find these prices unless you are willing to spend some money. For example, I love that Christie's and Sotheby's and probably other art auctions show past lots and for how much that painting was sold for. You just need to create your own profile and then the past prices will show. At the same time, there are other websites such ArtPrice or ArtNet that unfortunately are not free, because those are the tools that are used from people in the field. You have to buy either a daily pass or a monthly pass or a yearly pass to see the past prices. So that is a pro and a con at the same time, because you can find previous prices to help you in your collecting, but it's sometimes very annoying and very hard to find. So I'll leave that to you. What do you think? It's a pro or a con? Probably very obvious pro for established artists is that depending on the artwork, that of course add some status and some prestige to your collection. So this introduces us to the cons for both emerging and established. I've already talked about this too. So the fact that emerging artists have a limited market validation, and at the same time with established artists, sometimes it can be really tricky to find the best price. Another con for buying emerging artists can be that you cannot be 100% sure that artists will have a long-term career. There is that element of career uncertainty, especially if you're like very interested in an artist who just came out of college. Of course, I don't hold this against them, but an emerging artist is emerging, so they are at the early stage of their career, so they are experimenting and trying different things. So you have to keep in mind that if you are purchasing something from an emerging artist, the artwork that you buy maybe today, it can perhaps be very different from an artwork that the artist will do next year, because they're still in that phase of experiencing. Another con can be because emerging artists are new to the art market, they don't have a stable pricing. So the price for emerging artists can often fluctuate and can appear inconsistent. And last but not least, of course, reselling. If you want to resell an artwork from an emerging artist, perhaps I will wait a few years before selling it, because if you're reselling it when it's still an emerging artist, the price that you offer can't be that high. If an artwork by an emerging artist that you purchased 5 years ago becomes more famous and established in the art market, then you can think of reselling it if you are interested in an investment. But if you're collecting just for the sake of collecting and for your passion, keep your artworks because you love them and they're part of your collecting journey. We can move to the con for established artists, which we already anticipated with the difficulty in finding the prices, so that's already one. And then, of course, higher entry prices and limited accessibility, because of course, if we're talking about a blue chip artist, unless they are like Damien Hirst, that it's so productive, I think there are not that many artworks that can satisfy the request. But that's also kind of the point, you know, because the artworks are so few, then that's why they are so expensive. It's a very old trick. Also, unless you are an old friend of this person or you are somehow connected to this person, it's pretty much impossible to establish a connection with an established artist or a blue chip artist, because they probably have like 2 assistants and an entire office that helps them, and yada yada. So it's definitely harder to get in contact with an established artist than it is to establish a truthful and trustful connection with an established one. So yeah, these were the pros and cons for purchasing established and emerging artists. Which one do you resonate the most with? Let me know in the comments, and if you like this video, leave a like and a follow if you want to see more of my videos. Ciao, ciao!